Hello, welcome back to the Invictus podcast with me, Gareth, and Sab, as always. And I feel like we need to get a jingle or some sort of tune to play us in, Sab. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, that would be very nice. Don't ask me though to start humming one or singing one because I think we'll start losing people listening. But yeah, it's good to be back, isn't it, mate? Another action-packed week in Invictus. We've obviously got the mid-season break at the minute in F1. We've got plenty to discuss though still tonight. It should be another interesting chat.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're saying, big week in Formula One, of course. Huge news coming out of Red Bull, and that'll be our top story and the first thing that we talk about this evening. And then we'll go on, and it's a little bit of a ratings night tonight. So we'll go through and personally give our ratings on each one of the drivers and of the teams, find out how they've been getting on this season. And then, of course, we've got the Invictus Racing League Round 4 wrap-up. The Japanese Grand Prix was this week, and we had plenty of excellent races around Suzuka. So we'll get to that. And, of course, we will finish up with Sab's favourite, the Hot Lap question. So don't forget to listen to that one. And if you are listening to it here live on twitch.tv, we do stream on Thursday nights, 8 p.m. here on our No Assist channel. And if you can listen, or if you can't listen to it live, we upload it to iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and Podbean, and equally the videos go back up on YouTube too. So plenty of places for you to catch it back if you don't get to hear it live. But yeah, welcome guys. As I said before, my name's Gareth, joined by Sab as always, and welcome to episode 9. But getting into the first point, and I want to get into this because I think there's a lot to talk about with, especially with the Red Bull issue. And of course, we heard a few days ago that Pierre Gasly was being dropped for the second half of the season. He's moving back down to Toro Rosso, and they're promoting Alex Albon up. Now, was this a shock? Did you think they give Pierre longer, or is this a little bit of well, was it inevitable really?
You could probably say it was inevitable, but I'm sure Christian Horner was quoted as saying there'll be no changes for the remainder of the season, and it makes you wonder whether this has come from higher up within Red Bull. I don't know. Pierre, you could say he's had a fair chance at it, hasn't he? And it's just not delivered. I think personally, I think being lapped twice by his own teammate in pretty much the same car kind of put the final nail in the coffin for him in that car. They clearly want to be challenging Ferrari in the constructors and scoring as much maximum points as they can possibly do. And with Pierre, let's say for their sake, languishing down in seventh, eighth, or ninth position, it's not really that good enough for them, is it? So I'm not surprised, but I am surprised because they said there weren't going to be any changes. But then again, this is Red Bull, isn't it? You don't get time to bed yourself in and settle down. You've got to get on it straight away. And unfortunately for Pierre, it's from the very beginning of the season, it's just never really gone right for him, has it?
No, and I think the precedent with there was that they've done it before. Of course, we saw Max was the one that was promoted in place of the now Toro Rosso driver Daniel Kvyat. So it's happened before, and fortunately that time it kind of worked in their favour because you had Max came in and won the first race in the Red Bull team, so it kind of set him up. But is it because I don't know? We all say that Max is definitely one of the stars of the future, if not the stars of now. But I don't know. I don't know whether to feel sorry for Pierre or not because he has had time to adjust his driving style because the way that he drove the Toro Rosso is he's kind of tried to translate that over to the Red Bull, but they're not the same cars, they're not set up in the same way. Pierre was always very aggressive with his driving style, especially under braking, and you could see that how he used to drive the Toro Rosso, and he drove it really well last season. You can't fault him. He had some fantastic
No.
races last season, like I think fourth in Bahrain he picked up, and
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just not gone right for him. And there was outcry when this change happened, and people said, oh well, they should have given him longer, and oh why haven't they moved up Kvyat? But I don't know. I think Red Bull probably take the viewpoint of they know what Danny can do. I think he's been in the
Yeah,
main team. They
yeah.
know his personality. They know what he can do in the car. They've seen that he's had a relatively good season so far this season. I think it's a really, really good chance for Alex. I think he's a fantastic driver that was very it was overlooked sort of coming out of F2. I think people were kind of expecting him just to kind of fall by the wayside, and so yeah, I'm really happy for him because especially in his last season in F2 last year with Dams, he was fantastic, and it was only really the last race of the season, Abu Dhabi, that he kind of fell out of contention because he had two issues with the car. So yeah, he could have been well up there in challenging George Russell, who actually took the title, but it's a big step up for Alex. And do you think this is something that he's gonna? Do you reckon he can step up to the plate with this one, or is he equally gonna be? It's I don't know. The nerves are surely gonna be there pretty much solidly throughout the rest of the season.
I agree. I imagine he will be quite nervous. It is a big step up, especially stepping up at Spa, one of the most challenging circuits on the calendar. It's definitely jumping into the deep end. For me, my initial worry is do Red Bull allow Alex to have enough time to settle down and bed in and get used to the car? Because like you picked up on briefly, the Toro Rosso is a much different car to the Red Bull. So it's going to take Alex, you'd imagine, some time just to get to grips with how the team run and how the car feels and handles and everything else. And I just hope for Alex's sake, because he's had such a good season, hasn't he, Alex? I just hope for his sake that it doesn't slightly derail his season somewhat, and his season tails off, and it ends up going out a bit of a whimper, because that would really, for me, it would really ruin the season for him, because as you may have mentioned in the past to me, he was very close to joining Formula E, and then he had this opportunity in Formula One, and he's took it bull by the horns, hasn't he? And really, really done exceptionally well. It's just the problem is, I think my opinion is the problem is he's going up against Max now. With Pierre, just quickly going back to Pierre, it reminds me a lot of the Stoffel Van Dorn Fernando Alonso situation at McLaren. Stoffel, who's wanted to try and prove himself, he was a very quick guy in GP2, F2 now. He looked like he was going to be a solid F1 driver, and it just never materialised, did it? He struggled to outperform Fernando, and Fernando really kind of swept him under the rug. And unfortunately for Stoffel, that's pretty much his career done. And there's very similar patterns, in my opinion, of that what's happened to Pierre with Max. Max, who's driven the wheels off this Red Bull this year, and probably arguably got results that the car should never have really got, but he's done it. And Pierre, who's maybe doing the best he can, but if he hadn't had someone like Max in his seat, he might not have lost his seat. So yeah, it's. I just hope for Alex's sake that it doesn't like derail, like I say, derail him and upset him. I hope he can just get stuck straight into it, and try and help Max score big points for Red Bull. So it'd be interesting to see. I hope for his sake it does work out, but I do have a little bit of worry for him as well.
Yeah, I think when you kind of look at the similarities between the Alonso and Van Dorn situation and what we see here with Red Bull, is it is obviously it's not identical. Alonso had been in Formula One a lot longer, but essentially at that time, McLaren was Alonso's team, and they pretty much did everything that he wanted. And but I think that's a lot of what's happening at Red Bull now. Red Bull, they've really kind of put their future into Max now, and they will be desperate to keep
Yeah.
hold of him, and especially with these Mercedes rumours that were flying around, and they will be fully on board with Max. And I think that's probably a big reason why we saw Daniel Ricciardo leave at the end of last season. Is he realised that he wasn't going to be as much of a priority in the team as Max was, and yeah, you can see why he felt the need to kind of move to somewhere where he might be the number one driver, because he goes to Renault. He's the big shot driver that's just dropped down from Red Bull, and he's got a lot to prove, and goes in at Renault and gets this big contract that we've seen him own. But Yeah, I don't. I think the problem with Red Bull this season is that I don't think they were probably expecting to be in the position that they are. I don't think they probably thought they could have been challenging for podiums, but would they
Yeah,
realistically have seen themselves challenging Lewis, or at least like I know they realised they had lightning in a bottle under Max Verstappen, but did they really think that they'd have the opportunity of picking up not only one but two wins so far and a handful of podiums? And I mean, Max has got himself up right behind Valtteri. He's only 7 points off Valtteri in the championship standings, whilst Pierre is only 5 points off of Carlos Sainz, down in seventh. And
yeah,
is this a case of Max overachieving and picking up more points than what they thought, or is it a case of Pierre underachieving? Well, I mean, he is. You can see that he is underachieving because of the
yeah,
results he's had so far this season. But I think if Ferrari had kind of had their act together a little bit more this season and had really kind of pushed forward and better than what we've seen before, obviously with a lot of strategic errors, and they may have been like out of reach of Red Bull, but Red Bull realised that second place in the constructors standings at the end of the season is well up for grabs this season, because
yeah.
you just don't know what you're going to get out of Maranello and Ferrari this season. So I think, is this just a case of they're bringing in Alex because they're like, look, just we don't want you to challenge Max, but we want you to support him. We want you to be there. We want you so that when he has this issue, like we saw in Hungary, where he just got stuck on that strategy because Pierre wasn't in a position to help out. They don't want someone to go up against Max and maybe go wheel to wheel like we saw between Alex and Danny in Hungary, but they want someone there that will at least kind of pick
Yeah.
up the odd podium here or there, fourth places, because I mean we've gone through how many races so far this season? 12 races, is it? And Gasly's highest position is fourth, and he's done that once. And it's just not good enough for Red Bull.
No, no, I agree. And you picked up on Ferrari there. I was about to just raise that point myself. If Ferrari had been the team that we all expected them to be at the beginning of the season, you'd have probably, like you say, Red Bull would have been hoping for podiums at best this season, and Max, what, filtering round between the third and fifth positions. And if that had been the case, and Pierre, say, floated around between fifth and seventh position, Pierre might not have ended up losing his seat, because it looked like that's the best both cars were going to get throughout the season. It's just because Red Bull have capitalised, haven't they, on Ferrari's well, I'll say poor season. They've, like you say, realised that they can take this second in the constructors' championship, and because Pierre hasn't stepped up, like you say, with Hungary, to be able to support Max. It's kind of done himself out of the seat as well. So it's, for me, it's weird, because I do feel sorry for Pierre, because I think he is a really good driver personally. I don't think he's going to ever be a champion, but I think he's good enough to be a Formula One driver. There's been a lot worse drivers in Formula One than him, but it's just he's not helped himself either, has he? So for Red Bull's sake and Alex Albon's sake, if he can come in and get, say, a fifth or even a fourth, and Max is up in second and third, and Alex is really pushing the likes of Seb and Charles in the Ferraris, then they'll see that as a success. I think Red Bull. It's going to be completely different for Alex now, isn't it? Because first half of the season he was fighting with the Alphas, the McLarens, the Haas, and sometimes the Racing Point, and now he's going to be fighting at the front, well, towards the front, with the Ferraris and possibly Mercedes if they are having some issues. So it's a completely different scenario for Alex now. So which brings more pressure onto him, because the light might not have been shining on him as much while he was at Toro Rosso, despite how much people were saying how good he was doing. But certainly the light will definitely be on him now. Now he's at Red Bull, one of the big three teams. So yeah, he's got a lot to take in coming into Spa. But yeah, like I said previously, I hope it does work out for him, because if it does, it'll be a great move from Red Bull, and who knows, it could be a permanent driver with them for the next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. I really like Alex. I think he's a fantastic driver. He's done brilliantly so far this season. Like you said, maybe he hasn't had the spotlight on him. Now he has. So he's really got to step up now. But I fully believe that he has the ability. We saw sort of in Germany that even though he was, I think it was Lewis that was chasing him down in the rain. He didn't just like roll over and let him past. He definitely gave him a go at trying to hold on to the position. So he's got that fighter instinct in him. He's not, like I said, he did well in F2 and he was in the championship fight. So he's not sort of a stranger to battling towards the front end of the grid.
Yeah,
And so he's got all the potential in the world, and I think if Red Bull did stick with him, that's a fantastic youthful lineup, kind of for them to go on into the future with. But I don't know what's the future for Pierre then, because we've seen in the past with Kvyat how when he was demoted from Red Bull back down to Toro Rosso that he fell out of the Red Bull program at the end of this season. Is the same happening to Pierre? Is this too much of a confidence kind of damager? Then what can he do when he goes back there? Because I think that once this happens, F1 drivers have egos. Like
yeah,
majority of them will have an ego, and this is a big hit to an ego. And whether they're sort of the arrogant ego or not, it's gonna be a real hit to his confidence, and
yeah.
it's a I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see how Pierre comes back from this because does he leave the Red Bull program at the end of the season? And look, I think in theory he could go to Renault. And I know obviously there's talk about Hulkenberg leaving, and I think
Yeah.
Renault would love a French driver in a French manufacturer. I think that would be a brilliant PR move for them, and I think they'd snap that up, and it would then become obviously the ghost of Red Bull, but as with the old engine supplier and obviously Daniel Ricciardo teammate with Pierre, but I don't know what's the future hold for Pierre Gasly.
That's a very good question, too. And I also like to say for Pierre's sake, he needs to get back into that Toro Rosso and start beating Danny, doesn't he? Because if he goes back into that Toro Rosso and Danny's beating him, out qualifying him, and finishing higher in the races, he's gonna be quickly out of that Toro Rosso seat as well. I think because it's not going to be easy because Danny arguably has had a better season than Alex, and they were never going to, obviously, like you pointed out, going to promote Danny because they knew all about it. But Danny has had a superb season, picking up that podium at Hockenheim. So it's not going to be easy for Pierre to drop down and and just carry on like everything was okay like last year. He's gonna find it really tough for him, and if it doesn't quite work out for him, then like you say, a seat at Renault possibly, if Hulkenberg is on his way out of there, you would say would probably be the right move for him to get away from that Red Bull program, take that chapter of his F1 career uh, away from him and just look forward. Because if in my opinion, if he stays with Toro Rosso next year, he's just got that like linger about him of what failed last year, and he's like a failed Red Bull driver, and you don't need that because that dents confidence, doesn't it? You need to be focusing firmly forward. I think if it doesn't work out for him, then would there be a seat available apart from maybe the Renault? Would there be a seat available for next year? Maybe Haas. We've in the previous podcast, haven't we, spoke about Haas, how we reckon their drivers will be on the way out. So there is potential seats out there for him if this demotion as such doesn't work out for him at Toro Rosso. But for me, yeah, the initial thing starting with the next race is he's got to beat Danny. He's got to get going straight away because it's not going to look good for him, is it, if Danny out qualifies him and out races him?
Yeah, big time. It's going to be real interesting this second half of the season because there's going to be a lot going on, and Helmut Marko is known for not exactly being one to kind of hold his tongue and definitely draws from the hip pretty quickly. So all three guys under pressure for the end of the season to partner Max. But a few podcasts ago, we did our predictions for the 2020 grid, and we chose Max Verstappen lining up against Alex, or lining up with Alex Albon in the Red Bull from next season. Are we? Do you still stick with that? Do you think, because that was before Kvyat picked up that third place? Do they move Danny back up at the end of the season? Are they going to go with Alex? What has your mind changed somewhat, or they could even move Pierre back up if he gets his confidence back up with a couple of good results at Toro Rosso?
I think uh, I think I will stick with what we originally said and say Alex will stay in there. I think even though Danny has had a solid season, I think he would. I don't know about you. I think he would cause too many problems. Well, not cause problems, but he'd be more of a thorn in Max's side rather than what Alex would be. I think Alex comes across. I could be wrong, but Alex comes across as more of a, a team first kind of guy. And if he realizes that there's points to be scored in third and fourth for the team, rather than try and go all out for third place over Max, he would rather just sit out and make sure the team scores the maximum points. Whereas I get the impression with Danny, if there's an opportunity to slide one down the inside, he wouldn't be afraid to do so. So I think at current sitting, I think I expect Danny to probably stay at Toro Rosso, and if Alex doesn't disappoint at Red Bull, which I'm hoping he doesn't, he will get that seat for 2020. What is your opinion as well on this?
Um, I think it's really interesting, this one. I keep on flip flopping between whether they see Danny as being a viable promotion back up to the big team. I think Pierre's done at Red Bull. I don't think they see a move down and then back up that quickly. I think they'd, if anything was going to happen, he'd have to kind of re-impress them back down at Toro Rosso, something special if he was going to earn a way back up. So I think at the moment it's a fight between the what was Toro Rosso teammates. I think it's going to be Alex and Danny possibly, and I sway more towards Alex. I think, like you say, he's more of a team focused driver. He's that sort of he's got a much more relaxed demeanor, and I think he's a little bit more adaptable, possibly, than and Danny Kvyat is, and especially more than Pierre Gasly is, because he's so kind of new to this environment that he can kind of really just get on with it now, and he's probably a little bit more relatable to Max. I think this being around the same age, they can kind of work together to kind of improve and encourage each other. And I think Max needs someone in the team to not be. I'm sure Pierre was a good teammate to have, but you do want some sort of competition from your teammate to keep you motivated and keep yourself pushing.
Yeah,
Because we've seen that in Mercedes this season. Because obviously at the start of the season, Valtteri was a completely different man. I mean, he's tailed off somewhat towards the midpoint of the season, but it made Lewis have to step up to another level, because obviously Valtteri started the season with those really really decent results in Australia and Baku, and then obviously Hamilton then had to took 4 wins in a row from Spain to France. So I think it shows, if you've got a decent teammate, it kind of promotes you to be a better racer. So yeah, hopefully Alex can do the goods over the next few races. But I think, like you said, he does need a few races to kind of bed in.
yeah,
But I would hope that by the time we get to somewhere like Singapore, that he is used to the car and he can push it to its limits. And
yeah.
hopefully, I'd like to see him on the podium. I think that would do. He'd really deserve it. I think he's earned it. And yep, Danny got a podium for Toro Rosso, but some may say that it was good driving, yes, but out of somewhat luck, that obviously there were so many incidents due to the weather. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing what Alex can do over the next the second half of the season. How many races it is? 7, 8 races I think we got left to go.
Yeah.
But going on to the second point, obviously we were going to do our ratings for the season. We are at the midpoint of the season, and we're in that summer break. All the drivers are off, and if you're on their Instagrams, they're all sitting off on a sunny beach somewhere in the middle of nowhere, spending far too much money on having a lot of fun. And but I'd like to hear what Sav's opinion is on how these guys have done so far this season, and yeah, equally give you mine. But I think what we'll do is we'll go down, we'll start from the tail end of the grid, and we'll work our way up, and then just a slight sort of few words of how you think their season's going, and then what you'd give them out of 10 so far this season. So we'll start off in 20th position in the standing so far, and that's George Russell.
Out of 10, I'd give him a solid 7, maybe 8. He's easily outperformed that car this season and his teammate, hasn't he? And uh, arguably he deserves that point more than his teammate, who we'll be talking about shortly. But George Russell's up there for me as one of the as we discussed in podcast previous. He's up there as one of the standout performers this season, because that Williams has looked anything but fast, but he's done pretty good in his first season in F1 and in that car. So I'd probably give between 7 or 8 out of 10. I would give him.
Yeah, I think I'd go for the same. I'd go 7.5. I think I'm going to give him. I think he has really, really done well since he came in. You can see that he's just just so professional in and around the team. He's brilliant with the marketing department, with any sort of work with Mercedes or with Williams when it comes to PR. He's done fantastic work in the car, got as much out of it as you could. Like you said, it was a real shame that he didn't get that point in Germany, and it went to Robert just after George made a late mistake. But you saw in Hungary, almost got into Q2, and then equally got up to 13th at the start of the race, and dropped back to, I think it was 16th by the end. But still a magnificent drive. He's completely blown Robert Kubica out of the water, and yeah, 15th, 14th he's had. I think he's had in comparison to what he's got underneath him, I think he's had a really, really good season. So yeah, George Russell, 7.5 out of 10. Teammate
Yeah.
Robert Kubica, how's he done?
Well, I, I don't ever want to give people zeros, because I think that's too harsh. But I'd I'd probably give him between a 2 and a 3, a push 4. But I wouldn't probably give him the 4, but between 2 and 3, just because this so-called romance of this this former F1 driver coming back and making his return just hasn't worked, has it? And the idea of bringing him back with Williams is totally backfired on him. And me personally, you look at Red Bull, they've got rid of Pierre. Personally, if Williams had the opportunity, I would look at bringing someone in like Latifi or somebody like that at Williams, and just giving them a chance for the second half of the season. Because they could not do any worse than what really Robert's done. He's struggled pretty much every race, lapped 2 or 3 times per race. It's just been a pretty much nightmare race, nightmare season for him. So I think when at the end of the season he should just retire and look at it as a failed second chance. But and I'm glad he gave it a go, but ultimately it hasn't worked out for him.
No, it hasn't. It is unfortunate, because he was such a promising prospect when he was in Formula One 10 years ago, or 10 to 12 years ago, 2006, or I think he came in around then. But yeah, it is a real shame. I was going to give him a 4. I only went for the 4 because obviously he has got that championship point. Fortuitous or not, he got himself into a position where he could pick up the point. But yeah, he's been dominated by his teammate all season. He's been well off the pace in qualifying. I think he's something like 0.6 of a second slower than George in most qualifying sessions. And then over the racing, he's been lapped countless times, and George is usually comfortably ahead of him on circuit, and they have had some fun battles when they've been around each other, but usually it is his younger teammate that's kind of won out. So yeah, I'd go for 4 out of 10, unfortunately, for Kubica. But overall, as a team, how have Williams done out of 10?
3 out of 10.
Yeah.
But I'd say they'd shown signs of improvement in Hungary, with George, like you pointed out, he's almost got into Q2. So the signs are there that they could potentially have a better second half. But overall, this has just been a season to forget for the team, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean they obviously had the issues in pre-season connection there. There we go.
Oh,
Sorry, had a little bit of a disconnection there. Give me 2 seconds.
it went completely silent for me for a second. There, sorry about it, guys.
That's fine. Yeah, sorry. Just had my controller turn itself off there. Um, but yeah, so
We good?
hold on. We'll be there in 2 seconds.
I need some
Run.
technical issue jingle now,
Yeah.
but
Da, da, da,
I
da,
could,
da, 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 da.
yeah.
There
You
we
need
go.
that girl with. There you go. Right, are
Right.
we good?
No reason why that happened, but yeah, let me know if anything like that happens again. Sorry, guys. Sorry for that's audio issues 2 weeks in a row. My bad. Um, where was I? So yeah, talk about Williams. Yeah, so issues in pre-season, weren't ready. Came to the race in Australia, were woefully underprepared, and luckily they have somewhat picked it up. So it it is signs are kind of are looking in the right direction for them, but if you look at the season, they are a million miles away from that
Yeah.
famous team that's taken many world championships. So yeah, a lot of work to do for Williams. Moving on to Alfa Romeo and Antonio Giovinazzi.
I would give him a 3 out of 10 as well, simply because he's coming to this team with Kimi and his much older teammate has pretty much wiped the floor with him, similar to what's happening at Williams. I think Antonio's picked up just 1 point this season for Alpha, which is not very good really at all, is it? It's a good job that team has got Kimi in it, otherwise they would be languishing right down at the bottom with Williams. Antonio, it's just not worked for him, has it? And unless he picks his ideas up, I don't think he'll be in that seat next year. So I'd probably give him a 3 out of 10, maybe 4.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. I've actually got him on the same level as Robert Kubica. I've got him as a 4 out of 10. Unfortunately, he's in a machine that we've seen from Kimi, who's currently sitting in eighth in the driver's standings on 31 points. He's only picked up one, and it's not like he's even retired all that often. He's only actually had one retirement so far this season. He's just been unfortunately slow, and I don't know. I was skeptical when they first brought him into the team. I didn't think that he was fast enough for F1. I thought that it was a little bit of a vanity project for Alfa and for Ferrari to have an Italian driver. I think that's probably why he got brought up. But if they want to do that, then Luca Giotto's in F2, and he's probably a better bet to get you some points than Antonio Giovinazzi is at the moment. So yeah, it's been a poor season for the Italian. He definitely needs to step up second half of the season. What about though, as I was just saying, teammate Kimi Raikkonen?
Definitely between a 7 and an 8, 100%. I thought he was stepping down to Alpha and he would just be there just to get his paycheck and see out his career. But boy, have I been wrong. He's looked as competitive as he's ever been really in that seat. He's been fighting with McLarens and Toro Rossos and others for good points between fifth and 10th, and at one point he was battling with Seb in Hockenheim, wasn't he? So he's looked really good, Kimi. He's shown that he's still got plenty of fight in him, even if people was slightly writing him off due to his age. He's done well, so I give him a 7 or 8 out of 10 for me.
Yep, he's been brilliant this season. I think the pressure is off now. He's dropped down to Alpha. He can kind of enjoy the twilight of his career. I've got him as 6.75 out of 10. He has he has had some really good races, some seventh places, some eighth places. In fact, it's three seventh place finishes. So yeah, he's done really nicely. A couple of he had three, I think it was three poor races, Spain, Monaco, and Canada in a row where he was sort of absolutely nowhere. Um, but yeah, 31 points, which I'm sure Alpha were delighted with, and I imagine they kind of wish that Antonio could have done something about it, because at the moment Kimi is somewhat carrying that team. Yet, so
Yeah.
or 6.75 out of 10 for me. But what about Alpha overall?
It's tough to say, isn't it? Because you've got one person doing so well and one person doing so poorly. I'd say just based on what Kimmy's done, I'd probably give him a 6 out of 10, maybe, just based on what Kimmy's done. I'd have probably gave him a bit higher if Antonio had been pulling his weight in points as well. But I'd probably around the 6 out of 10, just because of what Kimmy's managed to do with that car.
Yeah, I think I'd go for the same, maybe 5.5. They've had a good season. If Antonio was able to keep up, it would probably be a better season. They'd be able to challenge the likes of Renault and the Toro Rossos, who currently sit above them.
Yeah.
But it's still, you look at that midpoint in the table, and it's not. It's pretty close. I don't think they have definitely had a bad season, but I think there's definitely potential in the team for better, because I think they sit on 32 points. You've got Racing Point behind them, 1 point behind on 31. Haas are on 20. So I can't wait until we discuss Haas's performance so far this season, because they're on 26 points. But in fact, in fact, looking at the driver standings, it is Haas next, and it's Romain Grosjean.
I'd give him a 3 personally. I remember them on the Drive to Survive Netflix documentary when it said that he'd signed a new contract and they wasn't sure whether it was going to be a gamble or not that he'd stayed on. I think it was a gamble that has backfired on him personally. I thought Roman Grosjean was very lucky to get a contract again for this season with the team, and that car might not be what it's capable of doing, what we expected it to be doing, but he's just not performed again this season, Roman Grosjean, and he's proving to me that there's better people to be slotted in that seat. So I'd probably give him a 3 out of 10 personally.
Yeah, I've gone 4.5 out of 10. I think he's woefully underperformed. I think on his day he can be a very good driver, but we've seen so many issues and errors from him this season, and it's something that's kind of really sort of curtailed his entire career and followed him ever since he joined with Lotus, and obviously we had the race ban after the crash in Spa. And although he's kind of matured and doesn't make as many silly decisions when it comes to people around him, this season it seems to be his teammate. And we'll get onto it with K-Mag next, but Roman, you've got to take 50-50 blame in a lot of these things, and unfortunately for him, yep, 4.5 out of 10, 8 points so far this season, not good enough. So Kevin Magnussen, what have you got him for this season?
I'd say 4.5 out of 10 for K-Mag. He's outscored Roman. He's not crashed into the pit lane. Yeah, he's had some incidents like you've just pointed out, 50-50 instance with his teammate. He got a good, was it P5 in qualifying in Austria, which was pretty good to say at the time when Rich Energy was saying it's as slow as a milk float. He has pulled out some good results. He pulled out a sixth place in Australia. He's when he's able to, he's pulled out some results that probably that car didn't really deserve. So I give him a 4.5 out of 10, really, because he has had some good races, but then he's also had some like really off races that he's never looked like being at the races at.
Yeah, I've got him at 5 out of 10. I think he's, like you said, he's had some good races when he's able to, when he's on his own, essentially, when he's not around someone. When he is around someone, he kind of loses his head. I've said before, I don't like his attitude. I think he can be quite a dangerous driver at times. He moves around a lot in the braking zones. He moves around on a track full stop when it comes to when he's being followed by someone. So yeah, I've never been a massive fan of K-Mag since he joined the grid, and this season at Haas, it's just too many incidents with Roman, and whether you call it his fault, whether you call it Roman's fault, or equal both fault, he's been in position to be in them, and just moaning down the radio is just I hate listening to it. Him moaning after he crashed in Canada, had his car completely rebuilt, and spent the entire race telling the team how awful it was to drive. Just shows just how ungrateful he was. And yeah, hopefully Gunter Steiner after the race told him exactly where to go and apologise, because I'm sure the guys in his garage weren't particularly pleased with him for that one. So yeah, K-Mag, 5 out of 10, but that's being generous, I think. 18 points, once again, not good enough. Haas, overall, how have they done?
I'd give them a 4 out of 10 simply because I was expecting them to be challenging for that fourth place this year. They had a super year for themselves last year, and it's just gone badly wrong this year for them. A lot of off-track distractions, as well as poor poor performances with the car. It's just not worked out for them, has it, with Haas? And unfortunately, they've just fallen way down the constructors now. So I would give them a 4 out of 10.
Yep, same. I've got them as 4. We were kind of under the impression before the season that it would be Haas and Renault that would be challenging for that
Yeah.
sort of fourth place in the constructors' standings, and we know they've kind of buddied up with Ferrari and get a lot of these X pieces off of the Ferrari car, but they've been all over the place this season, and yeah, it's issues within the team, issues with sponsors, issues with the car. Like you don't even know, or they don't even know what the right aero setup is. They keep going back to different race setups and different aero setups, and it's been an awful season for Haas. So yeah, 4 out of 10 for them so far this season. Looking to over to the Racing Point team and Sergio Perez.
Yeah, well, I have to say this is probably the worst season I've seen Perez have in a very long time. I was just looking at this chart here. His last point scoring finish was Azerbaijan,
Yep.
which that's ages away, which is surprising really, because Perez is normally a really solid point scorer. Been outscored pointed by Lance Stroll this season, which really surprised me, because like I say, Perez is usually in and around that top 10 quite regularly. I don't know whether it's down to he doesn't like the handling of this year's car or what, but Perez for me, he's just not been good enough, has he? I'd give him, I'm being generous, a 5 out of 10, just because it's just been a very average season for him.
Yeah, I've got a 4.75 out of 10 here. I think, like you said, very average season. Only 3 points scored so far. He did pick up a very nice sixth position early in the season at Azerbaijan, but apart from that, he's just been sitting outside the top 10. A lot of 12th and 11th place finishes, and like you say, it's very not like him. He's been very good in qualifying. We've seen him do really well in qualifying, but in the race, he's just, especially the sort of the last 6 or so races, his pace has been nowhere, and he has been outscored by Lance so far. And Lance gets a lot of grief online, and sometimes rightfully so, sometimes not. But yeah, it's Sergio's got a lot of work to do if he's going to keep his seat at Racing Point next season, because yes, he has a lot of financial backing, but the team will expect more from a driver that's got arguably quite a lot of experience in F1.
Yeah.
So going on to his teammate and of son of the owner of the team, Lance Stroll. What have you got Lance for this season?
I'd give him a 5.5 out of 10. His qualifying has been pretty horrific, really. He's quite often been knocked out in Q1, and no reason why he has been knocked out of Q1, especially like you say, Sergio, his teammate, has qualified well. Lance did pick up that fourth place in Hockenheim, drove superbly well in mixed conditions. He always seems to do well in mixed conditions, doesn't he? But he has outscored his teammate, so I'll give him a 5.5 out of 10.
See, I've still got both drivers for Racing Point at 4.75, purely because I think that fourth place just inflates his position a little bit too much. I think in a race that conditions were all over the places, it unfortunately, well, I say unfortunately, fortunately for Racing Point, but it was just right place, right time for them. We said before that it potentially could have been Williams, because obviously George Russell had the issue at the time where he could have pitted at that time and come around with this under the safety car. And Yeah, it was just Racing Point that got out in the right place at the right time. So he's got a lot of points, but like you said, qualifying has been dreadful this season. A lot of races so far, he's been stuck just been in no man's land. Last race in Hungary, he just couldn't keep up with George Russell, couldn't get past him, um, which kind of says a lot about where your race pace is. I do. I don't find Lance as grating as other people do. I think that obviously he's very lucky to be in Formula One due to his parental contacts. But yeah, he has probably he's got potential and he has flashes of good races in him, but very very inconsistent. Yep. So both Racing Point drivers for me 4.75. What have you got for the team overall?
I'll probably go with your rating of both drivers, really, just because I expected more from Racing Point this season. I thought they would have been, again, challenging with Renault, Haas, Toro Rosso, and they've not really done that. Like you say, they've been languishing down in 13th, 14th places quite more often than not. So, to me, a team that's usually known for getting the best out of a tight budget, they just haven't really performed this season. So I'll go with what you've just said with both the drivers and give them a 4.75 out of 10 for the team.
I've gone bang down the middle. I've gone 5 out of 10. They're technically a new team-ish. They're going through a little bit of a change, trying to build a lot of infrastructure behind the scenes before the cap comes in, the payment cap for 2021. So there is a lot of turmoil going on at Racing Point, but they do have a lot of money. Started off the season well. Checo starts off the season with 4 points finishes. They got a double points finish in Baku, but after that, it's been a pretty woeful sort of early to midpoint of the season for them. So yeah, 31 points so far this season. A lot of work to do for Racing Point. On to the Toro Rossos, and we'll start with Alex Albon.
Solid 7 out of 10 for me. He's done really well in that car, like we've discussed earlier in this podcast. He's come in and picked up good points, qualified well, and in the end, whether it's down to because they already know Danny, he's earned himself a seat at Red Bull. So yeah, I think he's had a very good season that we've discussed. So 7 out of 10 for me.
Yep, I've got him at 7 as well. I think he's had a strong season so far. Very good rookie season. Had two really strong races. Of course, had that one in Germany where he came home sixth, and that one in China where he started from the pit lane after having that crash that made him have to start from the pit lane, fought all the way through the grid and came in 10th. So may have only been one championship point, but to him to fight through after starting from the pit lane, really, really good result from Alex. So yeah, I've got him as a 7 out of 10. What about teammate Danny Kvyat?
Also 7 out of 10 for me. I think he's obviously benefited from that podium position to elevate his standings in the drivers' championship. But again, they've worked really well together. We picked up on it in a previous podcast how good they were at fighting for positions on track without tripping up over each other. The chemistry of the team before, obviously now Alex has left, the chemistry of the team seemed really good. There was a good vibe about the whole team, and Danny's obviously worked well with Alex. So yeah, I'll give him as well a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, and I've equally gone 7. I think he had a good season. Be interesting to see now what the dynamic is between himself and Pierre. Will he have as much faith racing wheel to wheel as he did with Alex? So yep, 7 out of 10 for Danny. What about Toro Rosso overall?
7 out of 10 again. I think they've had a solid season. I started the season not really expecting much from this team. Former Red Bull guy Danny coming back into Formula One, he didn't expect much, and Alex, who at very last minute got the seat in the Toro Rosso. You didn't think this team would do that much. You thought it was going to be like just see how it goes season, but they've performed well, and they've shown exactly why they deserve to be in Formula One. So yeah, for both drivers and the team, I'll give it a 7 out of 10.
I've gone 6.5. They've only dropped down a little bit for me, purely because I just don't think they've picked up enough double points finishes. They've only had one or two double points finishes so far this season. So yeah, there's a if they could just get both cars, well, even if it was eighth and tenth or something like that, it probably would have bumped them up a bit. But 43 points so far this season. They're fifth in the constructor standings. Not bad return for Toro Rosso. Um, Looking up, and this is interesting. This one. So we've got the Renaults. So we go up to Danny Ricciardo.
I will give Dan a 5.5, maybe 6. He started the season off pretty poorly, didn't he? He just couldn't really get any points. He did get a seventh in China, was it? Yeah, China. And his form has got a bit better, but overall, it's not been really a good first season for Dan in that Renault, and it's not really worked out that well for him. So yeah, 5.5, maybe 6 at a push.
Yeah, I've got 5 out of 10. Purely on, not on his ability. I think the cars let him down, which is what has kind of dropped him down somewhat with my ratings. He just hasn't had the car underneath him. Of course, he's had a couple of really unfortunate retirements. Opening one of the season in Australia, which would have really hurt him because I'm sure he would have wanted to do really nicely in front of his home crowd, and then equally had another one in Bahrain. The engine with both cars switched off almost exactly the same point in the race at the same corner. So yeah, it's not been a great start to the season for Daniel Ricciardo. Only 22 points so far this season, so I think he'll be pretty disappointed with that return. But what about teammate Nico Hulkenberg?
Yeah, I would probably go a 5, maybe 4.5. He's just not had a very good season, has he? And this is now pointing at rumours of his exit from the team. I thought he might have been a lot closer to Dan, and he was at the early stages. You did think him and Dan were going to be quite close at the beginning of the season, but Nico's just tailed off, hasn't he, slightly just lately, and it's just not, again, like you pointed out, the Renault car's not been good this season, and Nico's just struggled lately. So I'd probably 5 out of 10, maybe 4.5 for Nico.
Yeah, I've got 4.75 out of 10. I think it's been a poor season for him, whether it's car related or not. Only 4 points finishes so far this season. A couple of seventh place finishes, which he'll be happy with, but yeah, it's not been ideal. If he is leaving Renault, unfortunately, he's doing it with a little bit of a whimper at the moment. Hopefully, if he does end up on the grid, because I do like him, I think he's a good driver, very very consistent, and I'm sure everyone kind of wishes that he does get that podium one day, because he is a driver that definitely obviously you make your own luck in Formula One, but he really does. He's been there long enough to kind of deserve it. But yeah, shame for Nico. I've got him 4.75 out of 10. What about your rating for Renault?
5. They've just the team themselves have let the drivers down more than the drivers have let the team down. The car's just simply not been good enough, especially when we thought they were going to be one of the favourites to be the best of the rest and maybe push for a podium or two. It's just not worked out for them, has it? So 5 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I've got them at 4. I think, like you say, dreadful season for them. The amount of money they've put into it, they were expecting to be pushing the Red Bulls this season, and it's really kind of backfired on them. Too many issues with the cars, and yeah, a really poor season for the French manufacturer. A lot of work for them to do if they're going to be anywhere near competitive in the next few seasons. Now moving up to, this one's going to be easy, I'm sure. Your boys, it's the McLaren lads. So we've got Lando up first. What have you got, Lando?
I've gone both at 10 out of 10. No, I'm joking. No, no, I've got to be unbiased here. As much as I'd like to give them both 10 out of 10 because I think they've been absolutely flawless, but no. Lando has had a solid season, hasn't he? A pretty good season alongside his teammates. He's had some bad luck as well, like Hockenheim and a few other races where his car's just it's just conked out. So I'm giving him a 7.5 out of 10. He's had a very good first season in Formula One, and his future definitely looks bright. So yeah, 7.5 out of 10 for me.
Yep, I've got 7 out of 10 for him. I think, like you said, had a very good season so far. Unfortunately, had those issues at the likes of Germany and that really weird one in Canada where his entire rear frame of his car seemed to melt off. But yeah, it's been a good season for Lando. Really, really good results. Sixth places in Bahrain and or where was the other one? Was it France or Austria? One of the two. I can't remember which one it was off the top of my head. But yeah, sixth place there as well. So really good season for Lando so far. Always really enjoyed watching him through the junior Formula. Like George and Alex, all three of them have really deserved their places on the grid so far this season. So yeah, solid 7, pushing 7.5 out of 10 so far for Lando. Teammate Carlos, what's Carlos Sainz got?
I'd give him an 8 personally, and that's not being biased. I would give him an 8. He's got some good points finishes this season, 2 consecutive fifth places to wrap up the first half of the season. His qualifying sometimes let him down, but then he's made that up with some great fight backs. And one particular fight back I thought was great was in Austria when he started near the back and fought his way back through, and I think he finished eighth in the end that race, which was a superb recovery from him, and he's helped propel the team up to best of the rest in fourth place, and he's looked like the Carlos Sainz I think everybody thought there was at not Red Bull, sorry, Toro Rosso and Renault, and finally he's starting to blossom now at McLaren, so I'm giving him an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I've got him at 8.25. I think he's been fantastic this season. We were talking about it last week with underrated drivers, and we said that he's the most underrated of the season. He's been brilliant. 5 points off a Red Bull driver, 58 points so far this season. 3 sixth places, 2 fifth places, including that fifth in Germany, which included him almost spinning off the. Well, he did spin off track and had to reverse back on it. So yeah, it's been a really, really first 3 races didn't pick up a point, which is crazy to think now that he's sitting on 58 points. So say that he'd been as consistent throughout the season as he was at the start. Add on another 15 points, you've got him up in the 70-point mark. So yeah,
Yeah,
Carlos brilliant so far this season, 8.25. McLaren overall.
I'd give him an 8.5 out of 10. Maybe, I know it might sound biased, maybe even a 9, just because McLaren. It made me laugh at the beginning of the season when Helmut Marko said they'll be the worst team on the grid. How wrong has he been? McLaren have done absolutely superb. Yes, they are a team that want to fight for race wins and pole positions, and at the moment they just can't do that just at the minute. But they are doing everything else what they could possibly do, and they have absolutely blown the water out of the rest of the midfield. They have shown the rest of the midfield how to be consistent and score points regularly, and they've, for me as a fan, they've exceeded even my expectations. I thought personally it would have been Renault, Haas, then McLaren in the constructors this year, and they've outdone all that and more this season. So yeah, 8.5, maybe 9, just because they've far exceeded what I expected this season.
And how much would Helmut Marko love to have one of the McLaren drivers in
Oh
the
yes.
Red Bull alongside Max this season? Because I think you'd have an absolute cracking team if that was the case. But yeah, I've equally got them 8.5. Magnificent season so far, McLaren. Really, really enjoying seeing them fight their way back from a really poor sort of few years, and like I said, I'm not the ultra fan that you are, but I'm definitely a lifelong McLaren fan. I always grew up loving the silver and black West livery of Mika Hakkinen, David Coulthard,
Yeah.
Kimi Raikkonen. So I have always had a soft spot for them, even back to the Marlborough days and the white and red. And I grew up with a David Coulthard Marlborough liveried clock on my wall. So it's always good to see them back up at the front end of the grid. So yeah, 8.5 for them. Think they've been brilliant. Really looking forward to seeing what they can do for the rest of the season. Now we move up, and I'm sure we'll get. We've been talking about him before, Pierre Gasly, and it's the Red Bulls.
I would give him a 5, 5.5 out of 10. maybe. He's just not been good enough, has he? He's he's done probably the bare minimum in that car and struggled a lot. And just like you pointed out with Carlos Sainz is there or thereabouts with him. No disrespect to Carlos Sainz and McLaren, but he shouldn't be close to Pierre in that Red Bull. The Red Bull should be long ahead of him. Pierre's had some bad luck as well, but overall it's just not been a season for him. And yeah, 5.5 out of 10 for me, I'd say.
Yeah, I've got 4.75. He just hasn't it hasn't worked. Yes, he's had sixth and fifth place finishes. He's had one fourth in Great Britain, Silverstone, which was his best race of the season. But we've seen him struggle to overtake cars that he should be passing with ease. I don't think you'd have. I don't. With all respect to McLaren, I don't think that Max Verstappen would have stayed behind Carlos Sainz as long as he did um, in Hungary. So it's just not been good enough for Pierre. So 4.7 out of 5. What about Max?
I'd give him a 9. 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10. You could even push to 10, but I don't like giving 10 out of 10s. He's been absolutely superb this season, Max, hasn't he? He's outperformed the car. He's absolutely smashed his teammate. He's shown as well that he can take on the Ferraris and most of the time beat them. So yeah, Max has been absolutely fantastic this season and deserves all the plaudits he's getting at the minute. It's been a pleasure to watch. I know if my girlfriend's listening, she will be laughing her head off for hearing me lord on Max here because I always like to wind her up about him. But yeah, Max has been superb. So an easy 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10.
Yep, I've got him as a 9. Fantastic season. He has been finished inside the top 5 for over the last season. So 20 or so races ever since Hungary last year. He's been inside the top 5 every single one and picked up 2 wins so far this season and 3 other podiums. Getting everything out of that Red Bull. We didn't think it was going to be a race winner so far when we started the season. We thought that Ferrari and Mercedes were going to have their own battle, but it's been Max. Austria, really special win for him in what is almost a home race for him, but it's a home race for Red Bull. Picks up the race victory in Germany after fantastic driving, fantastic strategy from the team. Really looking forward to seeing what Max can do in the future. Final 2 teams, and we'll go up to Ferrari first, and we'll go to their rookie driver, Charles Leclerc.
I don't know. You didn't, by the way, ask about the Red Bull as a
Oh, I
team as a
didn't.
whole.
No, I didn't. Good shout. What have you got for Red Bull?
I would give them an 8.5 out of 10. I would give them a 9, but I think Pierre has let them down. So if Pierre had scored more points, I'd have given them a 9 just because we didn't expect them in their first year with Honda to perform so well. So I'll give them an 8.5 out of 10.
I've got them a 9 out of 10. And unfortunately, I probably would have it lower because of Pierre's. But for them, strategic wise, they've been pretty bang on. I think we've only seen one real error, and that was at Hungary. Apart from that, we've seen 2 consecutive world record pit stop times from their pit crew. They've been stellar this season so far. So yeah, 9 out of 10 for Red Bull. But yeah, on to Ferrari and Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, this is a tough one because he's made a few mistakes this season. He should have arguably won in Bahrain if that engine or turbo or whatever happened let him down. He did, I think, end up on the podium, but he should have really had the race win. He's you could say he's been better than his teammate this season, which you have to do, don't you? Really, first to beat your teammate, and then see what you do after that. He has arguably beaten. Might not be in the points, or is he in the points there? No, he's not quite ahead of his teammate in the points standing. But Charles, I'll give a 7 out of 10, 7.5 out of 10. He's done well in his first season in Ferrari, but he's also made some rookie mistakes here and there, which have ultimately cost him, like at Baku when he crashed in qualifying, and similar in Hungary as well when he spun it out of the final corner into the wall. He was lucky the car was able to drive away and back to the pits. So a few mistakes in there, but I think if he's ironed them out a bit more, he'd get a higher score. But I'll give him a 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I've got him at 7.75. Really like Charles. Really hope that he can do well. I was hoping that he kind of walk over Sebastian this season and really stamp his authority. Especially seeing as Ferrari kind of said that Sebastian was going to be the number one driver. I would love to have seen Charles kind of get that win in Bahrain. Would have been really good to see. Unfortunately, he dropped down to third. But yeah, a couple of or four third places, 1 second. Just needs that win just to kind of really cement himself and get that confidence back up. But when he has finished, he's retired twice, of course, in Germany and in Monaco. But when he has finished, he's finished inside the top five. So nice and consistent for Charles. 132 points, 24 off his teammate, which I'm sure will be a little bit too many for what he wants. But a relatively good season so far for him. What about Seb?
I'd give him a 6.5 out of 10. There's been way too many mistakes, unfortunately, on his side. He's had some technical issues as well, which have been out of his hand in qualifying and stuff, which has let him down. He should have arguably won in Canada if it wasn't for that 5 second penalty what he was given. He drove superbly to come back from the back in Hockenheim in the mixed conditions, but overall it's pretty much a season to forget for Seb. So 6.5 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I've got 7 out of 10 for Seb. Qualifying, not good enough so this season. Just hasn't been in the races in quali at all, and went for a spell of not. I think it was what 3 races in a row, possibly 4 races in a row that he didn't even qualify inside the top 10. So top 10, top five, sorry, and yeah, it's just it's like you said, a bit of a season to forget for him. Didn't manage to, hasn't managed to pick up a win for a long time and a couple of third places, of course, in Germany had that nice fight back. Equally, Hungary got past Charles last 2 laps to go, I think it was. Got past him for the podium, but he's, I mean, what, almost 100 points off of Lewis, which just isn't good enough for Sebastian Vettel.
No.
So, yep, 7 out of 10 for me for Seb. What about for Ferrari?
6.5, 7 out of 10, maybe even a 6. They've massively disappointed me this season, Ferrari, especially like we keep saying. And what we expected in pre-season from, we expected them to be race winners, pole positions. We thought it was going to be a real title fight with Mercedes all throughout the season, and it's pretty much been anything but that. Ferrari just haven't got their act together. Some of the strategy calls are very questionable. They've got more plans than the alphabet. It's just like I said about Seb. It's been for the team. It's been a season to forget. So I'd say 6.5. I couldn't possibly give him a 7.
No, I've given them a 6.5. Like you say, poor strategy. It's cost them. It's cost them so much they might not even get second in the constructors' championship, which is crazy to think that in pre-season we were looking at saying that Ferrari could potentially walk it with the speed that they had in their car. So, been a really disappointing season for them. And then finally, we have our reigning champions, and that is Mercedes. And firstly, we'll go for Valtteri.
I would give Valtteri a 7, maybe 7.5. Basically, I would have gave him maybe an 8. He started off the season superbly, as we alluded to earlier. He's just this last few races now tailed off a bit, hasn't he? Yeah, he had the issue in Hungary, what arguably wasn't his fault. He had that come together with Charles, but it's just last few races. It's just been like the Valtteri of last season, and it's kind of gifted the championship now to Lewis. The mini inter-team battle we thought we might have is just starting to fade away now. So I'll probably give him a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, so I've gone for an 8. I think he deserves it because he is, even though he's kind of underperforming over the last few races compared to what we saw at the start of the season, he is double the guy that he was last season. Last season, he was a shell of a driver. You could see he was beaten into submission by the team and by Lewis. This season, picking up the win in Australia and then equally in Azerbaijan, which I think was he saw his vindication after that puncture he had in the last lap last year. Yes, he is comfortably behind Lewis, and we'll get on to Lewis in a second. But yeah, it's been a good season in comparison for Valtteri, and I'm sure The 2 wins will make it feel a little bit better. He just needs that consistency just to keep pushing Lewis. But getting on to Lewis can is does well really consistency from anyone. Can it stop him?
Uh, well, Lewis is being Lewis, isn't he? He's drove the nuts off that car. The car's been super reliable, super fast. It's been everything what you expect these days from Mercedes. I would give Lewis, same as Max, really, a 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10. He's pretty much dominated this season, hasn't he? You could, for argument's sake, he's not really had much of a challenge this season. Um, so it's just been a one-man show, really. But Lewis, he still has to get the job done, doesn't he? And him and the team got the strategy right last time in Hungary, and just picked Max for that win. So Lewis is going to be going to be the reigning champion again this season. So yeah, 9 out of 10, 9.5.
Yeah. We're looking at a 6-time world champion coming up in the next few races at the moment because I've got him as 9.5. I think he's been almost flawless. Yes, he had the issues in Austria, and yes, he had that dreadful race in Germany. But at the moment, he's taken 8 race victories, which is the most anyone's taken in the first half of the season. He's on course to break Schumacher's record in the next, definitely in the next season. Over the next few races, he can if he can pick up maybe 4 or 5 more wins, then he's only got to get, I think it's 6 more next season. He's already the highest amount of pole positions of all time, highest amounts of points scored. He's just been, as the race engineers say, hammer time. He really has been on it this season. You can't. He gets a lot of flack and a lot of stick, and people don't like it. But unfortunately, he is one of the greatest of all time. So 9.5 for me for Lewis Hamilton. What about the team? How have Mercedes done?
9 out of 10, I'd say. They've done everything what you expect from Mercedes now, don't you? Nobody's really challenged them to even put under pressure, so they've just got the job done. You don't ever see unreliability with this team. Its strategy calls are usually bang on, like Hungary. Last race, they've just been Mercedes, really, haven't they? They've just started the season and ploughed through it, and nobody's really been able to stop them. And once again, it's the same again. So 9 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I've got the same. I can't fault them. They've been brilliant this season. Yes, they've made a few errors here and there. We've seen obviously in Germany there was poor strategy call there, but apart from that, started off the season with 5-1, or with the first 5 races were 1-2 finishes, and then Monaco's a 1-3. I mean, what do you say about a team that can do that? They've been fantastic. Like them or love, or hate them or love them, whatever, however you want to say it. They've been brilliant. They've got the most amount of wins, and they're on to another constructors championship. So yeah, Mercedes, fantastic season so far. 9 out of 10 for me. So that is our ratings. It went on for much longer than what I thought it was going to,
Yeah.
but really, really glad to hear what you thought, and we'd be really fascinated to hear what you guys are thinking, and let us know on Twitter. Or on the comments, of course, on all of these podcasts on all the streaming sites. You can drop a comment in there if you click follow, so make sure you do that. But if not, you can follow Sab and I on Twitter at GT2_driving, for myself at Alan Sabatino, for Sab. Let us know what else how you'd rate these guys and their teams of the season. What I think we should do is we will or have we got time to quickly run through? I think we'll quickly lightning flash go over the results for so far this week of the Japanese Grand Prix round 4 of the Invictus Racing League, because of course, if you are new to us, we are of course an esports racing league. We race on Formula 1 2019 and on GT Sport Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, and GT Sport on Thursday. F1 2019, of course, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And you can go and find out more about that, invictusracingleague.com. Monday night is the no assist race, and that's one that Sab and I commentate on. You can see that by following this channel here, by clicking on that follow button and watching us here from 8 p.m. on Monday night. And it was Scott, boy better know, SP, that took the race win there ahead of Scopefielder and Sammy the Pitto. A good race there and well needed for Scott.
Yeah, back to winning ways for the reigning champion. He got into the lead and defended well, didn't he? He wasn't ever allowing Scopefielder through, and Sam once again on the podium, Mr. Podium, you could start to call him the way he's going at the minute. But it was a superb race and some good defending from Scott. It was, yeah, like you say, well deserved and back to what he wants to be doing.
Yeah, back to normal for Scott. Picking up race victories is what he does best. So yeah, and equally Sammy the Pitto, another podium for the Spaniard. So watch out for him. But equally Scopefielder, very, very good start to the season for Scope. So hopefully that will be a nice trifecta of drivers that we'll see challenge each other for the rest of the season. Tuesday night, and it's the Realistic Performance League. So of course you get allocated a car depending on your performance from the race previously. This week it was won by the Alfa Romeo of Skyzy. So Skyzy picking up a win in the Performance League.
Yeah, he picked up pole position as well and drove it to victory in the end. Ton Albanak, aka Waving Tail, he wasn't far off Skyzy in second place. Skyzy, who picked up a penalty right on the last lap of the race, and Ton Albanak nearly pipped him for the race win. My teammate Tom TL44S, he came home in third, also in the Alfa Romeo. He drove a good race himself, picking up good points for himself and the constructors. But overall, it was a good race. Myself, just want to blow my own trumpet a little bit. I came home in fifth place, starting P8.
Oh, nicely done. On to F1. We've got Scopefielder took the win and a fourth in a row for himself to start the season. So a perfect season so far for the Swede. He takes the win ahead of Ton Albanak once again, who comes in second. So another runners-up medal for Ton. CPI Alex, who of course races on Monday nights in the No Assist League, he comes in third as well. So Scopefielder dominating F1.
Yes, he's on course to be breaking records, isn't he, Scopefielder at the minute? He's like you say, absolutely untouchable in F1. He's the clear favourite for that league, and it's up to the rest of the field, isn't it, to try and halt him. And Brazil up next. It's going to be difficult for the guys to slow Scopefielder down. It's going to be very interesting to see how that league carries on.
Yeah, can't wait to see the rest of that one there. F1, of course, our fastest of the equal performance leagues on a Wednesday night, 8 p.m. So you can watch that on the Twitter feed of Invictus F1 League, and that is Tim commentating on that one. On to F2, and it's Nick L.J. Thompson that took the win in the Ferrari, ahead of Esty Mats and Meg Lugby in third position. Another good race there in F2, had some real crackers so far this season. And Nick with a first win, the reigning champion in F2, and he'll be delighted with that one. And he did really well. He finished well ahead of everyone else, had almost 10-second lead. SD Mats, that's the second place in a row for the new driver. He'll be very, very happy with that. And equally, Meg Lugby finished second on track, unfortunately dropped to third. But in the McLaren with myself in fifth after starting 17th, so happy with that one. Good points for the McLaren team. So yeah, really, really good race in F2. Make sure you watch that one back on YouTube. That one is equal performance on Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. and that's Energy Dan. And Dan, shout out to him, who's always listened to the podcast and a fantastic commentator. Make sure you join him for the streams on Wednesday night or watch it back on YouTube. And then F3. And you said that you didn't want to talk too much about this race. Do you want to give us a very brief description of how it went for you?
Qualifying wet, race DNF. Move on. No, I'm joking. No, Ferocious Dan. He's proving to be the race. Not the race, the championship contender and favourite, I'd say. He absolutely superb in the wet. He got pole position, and he was absolutely superb in the dry race as well. He ended up a good 12 seconds in the lead of Mike, who came in second. He also qualified second. Mike, who's back in F3, is driving really well and synchronously, who started on the grid in P11, worked his way up nicely up to P3 and picking up a good podium and points position there. Good race, few incidents in there, but it's looking odds on at the minute for Ferocious Dan if he keeps this form up.
Yeah, ominously fast Dan has been over the last few races in F3. So has been a championship contender in the past, and well, one can only assume that he's going to be another one again this season. So yeah, they are the results that we had for the equal performance, realistic performance, and the no assist championship over Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday on F1 2019. Here, you can find out the league tables and find out where everyone is on our website, invictusracingleague.com. And I'm sure, even though we've run over and it has gone a little bit long, and of course we do apologise, we don't want to keep you, hopefully we've kept you relatively interested. We will finish up with the hot lap question, and we'll let Sab give us the answer. Of course, we'll give him a question. He's got 1 minute to let us know his answer and explain it. And Sab, your 1 minute is on the clock, and I'd like to know who will be the next driver outside of the top three teams to pick up a podium.
Oh, that's a good question. Just based on current form, and it might sound biased, but I'm going to say Carlos Sainz. I think he was a little unlucky in Hockenheim not to have picked up a podium. If he hadn't have had that spin, he probably would have picked up a podium. So just based on form, and if he can pick up some luck with some DNFs or troubles ahead of him, he could pick up a podium. So Carlos Sainz.
Of course, nothing to do with the fact that you're
No,
intrinsically affiliated with
no,
McLaren there.
no, nothing at all.
But yeah, so if you disagree with Sav, if you think it's one of the other drivers on the grid, let us know. Go to Twitter and, as I said before, at GT2_driving for myself, at Alan Sabatino for Sav. Let us know your thoughts and who you think might get a chance of standing on the podium before the end of the season. But for this evening, thanks very much, guys. You can follow us on Twitter. You can go to the socials for the league, Invictus RL on Twitter and Instagram, Invictus Racing League on Facebook, where you can find out everything that's going on within the league. InvictusRacingLeague.com is where you'll get the sign up page to get yourself on the grid. We have spaces in our F1 2019 leagues, and equally at the moment we've got the GT Sport League going on Thursday nights, and that one is always a really, really interesting one if you fancy something other than open-wheeled car driving. And that one runs on a Thursday night from 8 p.m. as I said on GT Sport, and you can find out the calendar and much more on the website about that. But for this week, thanks very much for joining us. Hopefully we haven't bored you, and once again apologise for my audio issue. Unfortunately, my controller just switched itself off halfway through. No idea why, but we will deal with it. We will come back and we'll be on episode 10 next week, and hopefully some more interesting F1 chat for you all. But for this week and for the rest of the week, we hope you have a very good one from Sab and I. Good night and have a good one.